Run It Studios and the Arthritis Foundation of Missouri bring you this special episode of the Run Radio Podcast. Welcome back to the Run Radio Podcast series with the Arthritis Foundation of Missouri. So it's been really neat to get to talk to so many people that have been involved with the Arthritis Foundation, found it to be a very valuable resource. And today I'm glad to talk to someone that I got to see at the gala, the Bone Bash, but we were so spread out that we never really got to talk. So we're going to now welcome Andrew Kuhlman.
Hello, how are you, Trina?
I'm doing okay, thanks. How are you? You've got a lot going on right now.
I'm doing well, but it's been a little crazy between just joining the board for the Arthritis Foundation, which I'm absolutely thrilled to be doing, but also I'm the executive producer at Stages St. Louis, a not-for-profit theater organization here in town, and we just closed our season with an amazing run of the beautiful musical Ragtime. So there's a lot going on, but it's good. It's good stuff.
That's really neat. You're going to be honored at the Jingle Bell Run, which is coming up right around the corner. And then you're co-chair for the Bone Bash Gala next year. How's that feel?
You know what? It feels amazing and strange in all of the right ways.
Yes.
We host an annual gala here at Stages every single year. So I've seen the administrative fundraising side of it for many years because I've been with this organization since I was 22. So this is my 14th season with Stages, but second in this new role. But I've worked with so many different co-chairs for our event who have just been incredible. So I've got some good role models and people to look up to and turn to for advice and input as we get ready to host next year's and put together next year's Bone Bash. I can't wait.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fabulous. It was great this year, and so I can only imagine. Let's talk about your personal connection to the Arthritis Foundation and your new diagnosis.
Yeah, so in summer of 2023, so just last year, I remember going home one night from the theater. I went home and I was just not feeling that well and went to bed and thought, oh, I've just got a cold. The next morning I'll wake up and everything's going to be okay. I woke up the next morning to this large pink rash on my arm and noticed I was having a ton of trouble walking, and also was having some crazy swelling in my left wrist and hand all over. Thank goodness I took my engagement/wedding ring off before going to bed.
Yeah. Yes.
But I just didn't know what was going on, and it kept getting worse and worse. And I went to the emergency room 3 different times, just going, what is going on? And at one point it was so severe, I couldn't walk. I mean, I was so in so much pain whenever I would put any pressure on my body that it was just awful. And doctors were saying, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, and giving me prednisone and different medicines to try and bring the swelling down. And nothing was working. Nothing was clicking. And so finally I went to the emergency room at MOBAP, Missouri Baptist here in St. Louis, and luckily, one of the emergency room doctors there said, this is your 3rd time in. We are not letting you go home. And so they admitted me, and over the next few days, they ran a ton of tests and had me on that beautiful pain pill button. That was helpful. But it was finally when a rheumatologist named Dr. Ying Du, who works there right at MOBAP's campus, came in and started looking at my symptoms, what was going on. And they at first just didn't know exactly what it was, but they had determined that my inflammation numbers were gigantic. Mm-hmm. Something was happening. And they said, we think we can figure out what's happening. It's just going to take us some time. And I remember I was sitting in Dr. Du's office I can't remember at that point if it was a few weeks, a month later. And she said, so you have one of 2 things. And she goes, the second is something called adult onset Still's disease, which is an incredibly rare disease that is an autoimmune disease that causes the most severe version of arthritis you can actually imagine in select joints of the body. And she goes, we don't know much about it. We don't know what causes it. We don't know. We know that it tends to hit people between 25 and 35. And this was about the month before my 35th birthday. So I was like, oh, I snuck it in just in time. There we go.
Yay.
I know. Wow. Lucky me. Um, but so after a few more tests and starting some medication, that was definitely what was determined that I had was what they call AOSD or Still's disease.
Oh my goodness. So it like rheumatoid attacks and destroys the cartilage around joints?
Yep, that's exactly what it does. And I have it in my left ankle and in my left wrist and hand. You can still see what I call my witch's finger that I
Yeah.
cannot straighten out all the way. And it was a few months from that diagnosis, and Dr. Du was always the most pragmatic, realistic person in the entire world because I was thinking, okay, we're going to get me on medicine and then I'll be to a place where I just take medicine every day and feel the same. And she goes, that's not what's going to happen. We're going to get you to a new normal. And so through a mix of, I think I take weekly Hyramaz, methotrexate, prednisone, a bunch of different combinations of medicine. And we've gotten me to a new normal. It was really January of this year was the first time where I went, okay, I think I can live like this. This is doable. There are still bad days mixed in with a lot of good days. There's not one day that goes by where I don't have some degree of pain that I'm dealing with that impacts life in a lot of different ways that I didn't expect. But it's always been my mission. I've been a theater artist since I was in high school. I love theater. And I said, I do not want to let this thing stop me from doing what I love most.
Right.
And that was really, really important to me. Sometimes I pushed myself a little too hard, as my doctors and family, especially my husband, like to say.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of who I am. But it's definitely a learning curve, kind of adapting to this new life and trying to still have a positive outlook and all of that. I was looking back through some Instagram posts the other day, and I remember there was one that was just a picture of me wearing a high top Converse. And I remember posting that day because I said, this is the first day in months, almost a year, that I was able to get a high top shoe around my very swollen ankle.
Oh,
And but you have to celebrate those little
yeah.
successes sometimes, those little milestone moments. And when I got to meet, I had breakfast because earlier this year, I said, I really want to find a way to give back to this community and support and raise funds. It's what I do professionally. So how can I do it for something else in my life that means so much to me? And so I just sent an email out of the blue to Dolores and said, if we could get together at some point, I would love to. She and I sat down and found a mutual admiration, love for each other over banana granola pancakes at First Watch in Brentwood. And I introduced her to those. She loves those now. And she said, I really would like to talk to you about a few opportunities. And one was the board, which is what I very much wanted. And one was to be the adult honoree for Jingle Bell Run, which I was completely surprised and touched by. But I'm so excited for the event on November 3rd. I can't wait.
I know that's going to be a great event too. Tell people a little bit about that, and then we'll come back. I've got more questions for you about your diagnosis.
Sure, sure. So on Sunday, November 3rd, we will be meeting in Tower Grove Park, right here in St. Louis, one of the best parks in St. Louis, I think. And it is an event to raise awareness and support the mission of the Arthritis Foundation. So people can join online. There are portals linked everywhere. You can't Google Jingle Bell Run without coming across it somehow. Yep. But there are so many different ways to support, which is what's amazing about this event is running is not my thing anymore. It's just not something that I can do, but I'm putting together a team. I'm raising support from my coworkers, my friends, my family. My husband will be running that day and bringing in donations. You can join as a virtual runner. You can join as a runner timed, a runner non-timed. If you want to support the mission of the Arthritis Foundation and their goals to change arthritis today, which is a goal we should all lock ourselves around in some way, because I guarantee it that every single person listening and not listening has at least one person in their life who's impacted by this disease and what it can
Mhm.
do. Um, there's a way for you to support this event. There really is. And it's something where I think you hear the phrase jingle bell run, and some people go, that's not me. I'm not a runner. There are still ways to support. Be there to cheer on your friends and family. Build a team of people to run on your behalf. Walk. Do whatever you need to do. It's going to be a really fun day with lots of educational opportunities, moments to celebrate, and lots of jingling of bells along the paths of Tower Grove.
Absolutely. Glad that you're part of that.
Me
Looking
too.
forward to seeing the pictures of the day and all that good stuff. I'm
Yeah.
sure it's going to be great. Let's go back. I love that you jumped right in into wanting to help the mission. Thank you for doing that. What were you dealing with though emotionally? Because it sounds like it was a pretty fast onset and bam, life is different. So when you had all the information that you needed and started processing, what was that like for you?
I think the hard thing is when you have a major life change like that, especially when it's based in the world of medical
Mhm.
issues, ailments, etc., you first start saying, this is as bad as it can get, probably. What does better look like?
Yeah.
And does better still mean that the things I'm having to cancel now and can't do right now, will I ever be able to do those things again? One of my favorite things to do in the entire world is travel, and I do it for work all the time. I'm usually up in New York about once a month for work. I also love to go on vacations. I love to go see new parts of the world. And there was a good chunk of 2023 where seeing a different part of the world for me meant being able to walk into my kitchen.
Yeah.
That was incredibly, incredibly hard. And realizing that there were little events and seeing photos of friends going out for drinks or going out to do this and do that, and them and me looking and seeing the text inviting me to go, but knowing I said no because I was just in so much pain. It's like the greatest symptom sometimes besides the pain is the FOMO, that fear of
Yeah.
missing out, is really, really hard to deal with, I think. And that I'm always, not my husband would disagree with that. I try to always be a glass half full person. I think
Yeah.
that's really, really hard. But there are times in the diagnosis period and kind of learning how to live with Still's disease that I went, the glass is empty. The glass feels empty right now. And sometimes it felt like, oh, it fell off the counter, it's broken. Um, but I think rebuilding the glass was a really interesting process because it allowed me to really explore what was I upset about, what was scaring me, talk to doctors more, go to online resources more, do more research, reach out to communities of people dealing with chronic pain, reading books by those authors and how to deal with that kind of stuff has been just hard and enlightening and beautiful all at the same
Yeah.
time. Um, and that's really what caused me to reach out. Is I said, I want to fight to live the life I led in May, now that I'm in June with a new diagnosis. And while
Right.
things today even are still different, like there's an elliptical sitting in my basement that is still very hard for me to use.
Yeah.
Uh, it is I'm going to New York. I was there last month and I'm going again next month and the month after. I want to fight for those things and say, this community of people, though we're dealing with a kind of a silent pain that you don't see all the time,
Hmm.
we're still here. We're
Yep.
doing a lot of things. We're fighting to be able to do them. And that's what matters most.
It really does. Were you drawn to certain resources on the Arthritis Foundation of Missouri's website, or what was that like for you? What benefited you the most at that place in time?
I'm going to admit that I didn't know a lot about the Arthritis Foundation when I first reached out to Dolores. I
Okay.
I was looking at different organizations saying, hey, I want to be able to serve one of these organizations and help and raise funds and et cetera. And when I saw Arthritis Foundation and I saw Dolores and we met, that's when I really started diving into what was available through the foundation.
Yeah.
One of my favorite days so far is when Dolores said, "Hey, would you come join us for a little bit of our Junior Arthritis Summit in downtown St. Louis this year?" And going down and hearing the stories of these families having to deal with this and fighting through the symptoms, and um, seeing the community of people that come together to find ways to create stronger community and conversation and openness about what we're all going through.
Yeah.
I think it's so beautiful. I really think that's the best thing that the Arthritis Foundation does, is stimulate conversation.
Yeah.
And that's something that we don't get to do a lot. I brought 20 people, 22 people to the Bone Bash Gala last week, and so many of them said to me at the end of the event, hearing the stories from people, talking to people at the event, watching the video, those were the things that really made them go, "Oh, wow, this is bigger than I ever thought it was."
Yeah.
And that was a really, really neat opportunity to be able to share that with them.
Yeah, that video at the Bone Bash, we saw this video of a family and their young child who was going through the diagnosis process. And for me, I could see my parents in that, knowing what they had to go through with me doing the same thing with I can't bend my knee. And that it's so great that now I feel like we've moved so much further with the resources and lessening the shame of it before. And even now, we can sometimes get so embarrassed by this disease that's giving us the witch finger that doesn't move, or making slowing us down, that I feel like when we talk about it more and normalize that it's happening to us, but we are still participating in life, that I think we're all going to be better for it and hopefully make it better for the newer diagnosed patients as well.
I hope so. I think it's, I mean, like I said, I work in the theater, and the power of the theater is here at Stages. Our tagline is "Experience the Story," and I think that's
Yeah,
a powerful, simple tagline, because the stories of past generations and people who have been through things, and theater strives to create catharsis. And I think that's also one of the cool things that Arthritis Foundation is doing, is by putting a number of people who support or have loved ones or have it themselves, we can stimulate and create great conversation and tell our stories. And that's a really, really important thing.
it is. So tell me a little bit more about still specifically. So if it, why don't they just call it rheumatoid then at that stage? Is it because of the intensity of it that
I think
differs it from rheumatoid?
it is. And there are other symptoms that come along with still
Ah,
things like
okay.
that. It's um unfortunately, the rheumatoid arthritis that comes through it is one of many symptoms that you.
I see.
So that is, I think that's why I'm not a doctor. So I will, I pay a lot of doctors, but that's about it. But it's like they say, I played one on TV, but
Yeah.
it's it's Still's disease. Is There's still so much unknown about it, but they do
Okay.
know that the arthritic symptoms are just one of a litany of symptoms that you can deal with.
I see. Okay. So like do you still get rashes, or is that something that is controlled more with the medication?
Yeah, the rash is something that just appears at the onset.
Okay. Oh, I see.
I mean, it was this giant salmon colored rash that was kind of stretching up and down my right arm. And it was very daunting to see. There was a lot of swelling at first that we had to get down. And I know that like increased body heat and temperature variations are very big as well in that world. And I still feel some of those things sometimes, where when I get overwhelmed, and unfortunately, it's one of those where you get flare ups in this disease mostly when you're stressed, and working not for profit arts culture, that is just something I have to deal with.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I know for me that my family and friends have been a great support. I had good doctors in the beginning that said, do what you can, that didn't shelter me from trying. Have you felt like you've had a really good support team around you that keeps you encouraged to get up when you don't want to get up?
absolutely. I mean, my husband is a constant ray of support always. And I'm just incredibly lucky that the organization I work for has been so supportive. every single employee here, we call ourselves the Stages family because we really are a family. And without them, I wouldn't have made it through. And then my two best friends during the time where my husband works in theater as well, so has to travel sometimes for work. But I mean, they were there by my side, taking me to doctor's appointments and making sure I had food when I couldn't get to the front door.
Yeah.
And they were, I mean, they were integral to my getting through all of this and keeping my head on right by making me watch binged marathons of Vanderpump Rules on Bravo. So that was my
Hey,
number one medication for a
yeah,
while.
no kidding. What is something that I mean, sometimes we have to draw our own silver lining when some of these clouds get so murky. What's something that has been a silver lining in all of this for you?
I think I have to go to, so I've had a number of health journeys in my life, and I think the biggest was, so at one point in life, I weighed over 600 pounds. I was a big guy, and I lost a ton of weight through diet and exercise, had a skin removal surgery, all of those things,
Wow.
to get myself to a place where I felt healthy and happy with myself.
Yeah.
And when you have a diagnosis like this and most movement is essentially taken away,
Uh-huh.
prednisone, which anyone who's ever taken prednisone knows that you can't walk by a fridge without having a snack. It is, and I turned to at that point, like food is my number one source of comfort.
Yeah.
And I gained a little bit of my weight back, not a ton, but up to a place where I was like, and I got that classic prednisone symptom of the moon face, they
Yeah.
call it. It really bloated in your face. And I started feeling really bad about myself, that I almost cared less about the arthritis diagnosis than I did about the fact that I felt like I was moving backwards,
Yeah.
my health journey. And then there was one day where I was talking to a friend and we were having a conversation, and I said, it just drives me crazy. I've got these 15 extra pounds on, and I've got a couple shirts that don't fit like they did when I was at my skinniest last year. And this friend said, you almost died 3 times last year from a number of things, mainly some altercations that happened from diagnosis forward. And they said, we can handle the 15 pounds. We'd rather
Wow.
have you here. Um, and that was a big thing, was that, life isn't perfect as much as we want it to be. And we can fight for being and achieving that image, that goal of perfection as much as we want, but survival, being with the people you love, trying to do those things that you love, sometimes they are going to give you a couple extra pounds, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting kind of key to use to unlock a lock in my brain about like looking at myself in a different way.
Uh-huh.
And going and saying, I like this guy because he's been through a lot, and
Yeah.
he knows how to fight. And that was an interesting silver lining.
Did you ever feel ripped off a little bit after going through that health journey to be your best and then have this hit?
Yes. Yeah,
I would say.
absolutely. Yeah,
I
no.
mean,
Yeah, no, that was definitely tricky, was kind of going, well, wait a second, I fought too hard
yeah,
for this. Come on. But you know what? This guy's still good too. It was after my diagnosis that I got married, that I got to buy a house, that I did some really cool things here at work. So he's
yeah,
doing a lot too, even with this, and that's okay. But yeah, absolutely, it
yeah,
felt like a little bit of a, when you see that guy standing on stage and you see the hook come out and pull him off. It went, wait a second, don't pull me off yet.
yeah,
I'm ready. I just got here.
yeah. But I would counter by saying, had you not done that, it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a lot worse.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
So good for you for making good decisions and trying to make yourself the healthiest version you can be and continuing to do what you want to do, even though this is another thing that you got to take along with you.
Thank you. I
and
appreciate it.
giving back. I appreciate that too. I'm looking forward to the gala next year. I'd love it if you come back with some updates or what you need along the way, and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to come back. I mean, it is it's podcasts and conversations like this one that really do just raise that awareness and make the talking about it, like we said earlier. I think that's one of the most important things you can do.
Yeah.
And so having conversations about this life is so important. So thank you for making this all possible, and thanks for the time today. It was fun.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Follow along at runradio.net. Get plugged in with the Arthritis Foundation and a local chapter near you at arthritis.org. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.